what I like to do is focus on the Microsoft team that is presenting and the team members that are presenting. So to do that, I ask that everyone make sure to mute themselves, keep your video off, and if you have questions during the event, please use the chat window to ask those questions. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So our agenda for this evening is first I'll give a little welcome from myself, followed by an introduction to our keynote speaker, who's going to be Stanley Grant III. And then once Stanley finishes up with the keynote presentation on CSEO and a little bit about his background, then I will introduce you all to some of the team members that have volunteered their time to talk about their experiences working for Microsoft and working for CSEO as well. So we're going to learn a lot about the team, Microsoft culture. And then after I introduce each team member, we'll go into a panel discussion where I'll try to have a conversation or a fireside chat between HBCU Connect and Microsoft so that you all have a better idea of the Microsoft culture, the CSEO team culture, so that you know what it's like to work for Microsoft. And so I have some questions that I'm going to ask of the team of panelists that have, like I said, graciously volunteered their time to share their experiences with you. And then after the panel discussion, we'll go into a live Q&A, so you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of the different team members or to the team as a whole about opportunities with Microsoft CSEO. So we'll have a live Q&A, and in that live Q&A, be prepared to ask questions using the chat. And then what I'll do as the moderator is I will read off from those questions in the chat window to the different team members here today from Microsoft CSEO. So after the live Q&A, then I'll hand it off to Jesse Sparks from the Microsoft recruitment team to give you guys some idea about the process, how to land an interview, what that interview process will be like for you, sort of on a step-by-step basis, and then we will end the event. So that will be our agenda for this evening. We're looking forward to sharing some information and hoping you guys learn a lot and are excited about opportunities with Microsoft CSEO. So first things first, let me introduce myself. My name is Will Moss. I am actually the founder and CEO of HBCUconnect.com. We've been around for about 20 years. A lot of you guys have received communications from myself about these opportunities with Microsoft. We're really excited about our partnership with Microsoft. We've been in partnership with Microsoft for about 8 or 9 years. Microsoft actually came to us originally to recruit talent from our website and from our network, but they got us to sort of think outside of the box with the challenge of making sure that we present, our candidates and African-American candidates to Microsoft's hiring managers and not just submitting, driving people to submit an application on a website, right? Because Microsoft has a really strong recruitment brand. They get, thousands, if not millions of resumes from candidates on a yearly basis. So the challenge was, how do we get the candidates from HBCU Connect, from HBCUs, from the African-American community in front of Microsoft's hiring managers? And so we did that by starting to do events in partnership with Microsoft. So Microsoft actually kind of got us outside of the box with out of the online space into the event space. And we've been doing events with Microsoft ever since. And you all are a part of something I feel is really special, because Microsoft is the type of company that is not just talking the talk when it comes to diversity recruitment. They are also walking the walk. So these events are not just branding events. These events are to help people get opportunities. So I really want you all to take advantage of this opportunity. You are having a chance to learn firsthand from some higher ups at Microsoft that are really taking the time, because I know they're busy. They're taking the time to present their opportunities to you. And then also some of these folks are actually hiring managers on the teams within CSEO. So you're getting get to hear, and ask questions directly to them and learn more about their opportunities. But that's what we came for. So without further ado, let me introduce Stanley Grant III, who's the Partner Director of Engineering for Commercial Sales and Marketing. So Stanley, if you're ready, I will hand it over to you.
All right, just unmuting myself. I guess just to start out, I'm sorry.
Okay. I think it's a little bit of
just
feedback.
Start out and give you a bit of background about me, which will kind of blend into, why I think Microsoft is a great place to actually work, and a great place to come to. I've been with Microsoft for 25 years. I joined Microsoft right out of college. And so I came right out of college, joined the company, and I've been here ever since. I worked on V1 products like Outlook when it was the very first version. I worked on that for about 10 years, from V1 until I think V5 or so, V5 or V6. Switched over, decided I wanted to do something a little bit different, get out of desktop software and work on more server software. So I went to SharePoint. I worked on SharePoint for about 15 years. I had the privilege of actually working on SharePoint at the time when we were migrating from on-prem into the cloud. So that cloud migration, I got to be a part of that, which was really exciting. And I did that for about 10 years, assumed a number, or 15 years, assumed a number of different roles on the SharePoint org, ranging from working on, the back-end telemetry system to collaboration, to workflow and UI. So I've done a lot of different things, both at Microsoft and on the teams that I've worked on. I switched over from Office and SharePoint to coming over to commercial sales and marketing. I wanted to learn more about the business side of things. I also learned a little bit about how the core services engineering organization is part of a digital transformation from more of a traditional IT organization into more of a product engineering IT organization. I'll talk a little bit about what that's about as well. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about why I think Microsoft's a great place to work and what's kept me at the company so long, which is what something I think could be attractive to people looking to join the company. One of the things that I really love about the company is that Microsoft at its core is a software engineering organization. And what I mean by that is if you look at the bottom line of how a business makes their money, it tells you a lot about that business. There are a lot of companies out there that make really great software. And I'm not saying that other companies don't make great software, but if you look at what the bottom line of that company is about, Microsoft's bottom line is about the software that it writes. We make money on the software that we generate. There are other companies that make really, really great software, but they do it in the service of selling something like hardware, selling devices. They make great software, but they make their money off the devices that they sell. And they make the software to sell those devices, and that's fine. There are other companies that, a lot of companies out there, they write great software and they make money off ads, like they're ad funded. And most of the money that they make is on ads. And the thing that's a differentiator to me from Microsoft is not just that we work on software and we build software. At my core, I'm a software engineer. I love software engineering. I came straight out of college working on software engineering, writing code. And I love that. And I love the fact that Microsoft, as a company, just does such a wide range of software. When I think about software engineering, and I think about all the different things that we do in the software engineering industry, Microsoft has a hand in just about all of it. If I wanted to work on operating systems, I can work on operating systems. If I wanted to work on databases, we have a SQL team. If I want to work on graphics, we have an entire team focused on graphics, developer tool, an entire division dedicated to developer tools. Productivity software, I can do that. I can have an entire career and work on just about every aspect of software development and be in the same company. That's kind of what I've done. The only things I can think of that Microsoft doesn't really get into today, and I've actually had to adjust this recently because I've made the statement quite a bit. Like we don't do mobile operating systems anymore. That's a game we were in that we backed out of and decided to not do anymore. So we're not doing mobile operating systems, although we do mobile development. The other one that I've traditionally said was self-driving cars, but within the last week we actually got into self-driving cars as well. And so there's just not a lot out there that Microsoft doesn't do. We do AI, we do services, we do cloud, we do just you name it, we do it. And there's not many companies where you can actually make that statement. There are companies that make great databases, and they're database companies, But if you want to get outside of that realm, you kind of have to go find a different company, go find a different home. And just being able to make an entire career out of, working at a company that has such a diverse portfolio of software is just awesome. When I want to go and switch between one division and another, or one part of the company and another, I'm not risking my job. I have to go interview with that group. If it works out, I can just go switch. And if it doesn't work out, I can retain my job. I can keep looking within the company, and it's just fine. Like the expectation is not that you get into a role and you stay there forever. Like portability across the company is actually something that we value. We actually value, reseeding other parts of the organization with talent from different parts of the organization. I came from the office organization, and I'm in an IT organization now. That's actually relatively a great opportunity. Now to dive into CSEO, Core Services Engineering and Operations, and kind of talk a little bit about what the CSEO org does. We are an IT organization, but we're far from a traditional IT organization. One of the things that attracted me to CSEO as a whole is something that we call the digital transformation of IT. There's always a tension in the IT world of, do you build it yourself? Do you purchase it? Microsoft has a unique role as an IT organization because we also build a lot of software. And so do we use our first party software? And there's always this tension between the three. And there's always unique needs of any organization that aren't met by the generic off the shelf products, or there's not something out there in the market. And so you have to approach it from an engineering standpoint. And IT organizations traditionally tend to vendor that out, or not build it as robustly. There's this meme, I guess I'll put it, that what IT organizations put out is lower quality than what product engineering teams put out. And that's actually something that we're in the process of changing. And actually, I wouldn't even say in the process, that we have changed, where we're actually writing software at the same level that any engineering organization at Microsoft is writing. And that was an explicit goal that our leadership had in putting together this organization. We're doing product engineering. We're building on top of Azure. We're building on top of the first party products. We're building things from scratch, ground up. Like Microsoft is serving as the reference architecture that we go tell our customers on how to build their solutions. And that's exciting. That's actually very exciting for me. When you look at the organization and the way that we're organized, we built the tools that our employees use to do their jobs. And so the way that the organization is broken down, I'm part of what's called the Sales, Marketing, and Shared Services Engineering Organization. We work on sales, building the tools that sales teams and marketing teams used to do their jobs. We also have some shared engineering teams. We have a data team that goes and builds the data fundamentals that we all build on top of to manage our data products within CSEO. We have a team that we call the studio team that does design and research for the organization, as well as providing what we call coherence controls, which is a common framework that people build on top of to build accessible, highly available controls. That's what the SMSE, or the Sales, Marketing, and Shared Experiences Organization is. There's another organization called the CPE organization, Core Platform Engineering, which is more inward facing, and it's essentially building the fundamental tools that our engineering teams within CSEO use to do their jobs. They also have responsibilities for things like supply chain, as an example. So how do we actually get the materials used to go and build the hardware that we actually produce for things like our physical stores. Physical stores are not consumer-based anymore. They're more enterprise now. We've kind of had a shift in that, but we still do produce the materials that we need to build the Surface, or build the Surface, the Xbox and things like that. And so, the company depends on that organization to go and provide both the set of engineering tools that we used to do, that we internally use to do our jobs, as well as how we actually supply, the product teams what they need to go build the hardware they need. We have the end user engineering organization, EUSE, and they focus on a lot of the tools that, like as an example, Teams. They run the Teams instance that the company uses to go and do their jobs, SharePoint, Office, Windows, making sure that when Windows updates come out, that they're applied to all the machines safely, being able to understand what the set of features that are coming out of the products and how does the company leverage them to get the most productivity within the company. The EUSC team focuses on that, and actually they're building a new app called MyHub, which is how employees interact to do things like, we have a number of different tools to, say how much time you've taken on a vacation, to be able to know what's in the cafeteria on a given day. To be able to have a bus to be able to go to different parts of the campus. That's an application that they built, and it's to help employees be able to do their jobs and to meet their needs. We have what's called the DSRE organization, which is all about security and security mediation. So when we are running these services across the company, are they secured? Are they being run safely? Are we under attack from an outside entity? Making sure that when we have content inside the company that's being handled appropriately and that it's not leaking out to the rest of the world. We also have an operations organization, and our operations org ensures that all of the different workflows that organizations in the company use to do their jobs run smoothly and run well. And so they're kind of the workhorse of the entire company, making sure that that everything that we do in the company works well. We also have a core functions engineering organization, which supports our HR organization and all the tools that we use to manage our company, as well as our finance organization. So Amy Hood's organization that actually runs all the finances, puts out the financial numbers, ensuring that people are paid. Our bonus, the system that we use for bonuses and stock, our performance management tools all come out of that organization. So there's a lot of different work going on in CSEO to support Microsoft as a company. And I just wanted to give you a bit of a preview of what that is and tell you a little bit about it. So I'll wrap it up there.
If it's okay, I'd like to ask a couple of questions.
That's always all right.
So Stanley, about how large is CSEO?
CSEO is about 5,000 people working in CSEO, and each portion of that has some number of people. Like the core platform engineering team is a little over 1,000. The SMSE organization is about 700. The EUSE organization, the end users services organization, that is in the 600 to 700 range as well. So each organization is different size, but the overall organization is about 5,000 people.
Excellent. So one thing I always am curious about, so I also have a software engineering background. I love software engineering. I built my company off of kind of rolling up my sleeves and developing, some code around a social network. So, but I'm always curious when I talk to other folks that have a software engineering background, what got you into software engineering? And then now that in your current role, I'd like to know a little bit about what you do sort of on a daily basis and how you matriculated into your current role. But I always like to start with kind of your background and how you got into software engineering.
Yeah, my background into how I got into software engineering is, I'll say a little bit embarrassing. I'll put it that way. So I went to Caltech, and when I got into Caltech, which is a very difficult school to get into, and it's a very challenging school in terms of science, to a certain extent, I always felt this need to prove myself, that I belonged. And I think that is something that a lot of Black folks can understand. Do I belong in this organization? Do I belong at this company? Do I belong in my school? And going to a school where I was one of, I think it was 8 Black people at the school. There's this question in my mind of, am I here because I'm Black and they're trying to fill out the recruitment needs, or am I here because I'm actually smart and I actually deserve to be here? And so I literally picked the hardest major I could think of. I picked physics, and I studied physics for 4 years. And I was actually okay in physics. I was actually doing well in it. I actually did 4 years of physics I was getting ready to go to graduate school, and and lining everything up for that, and realized this isn't really what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I thought about internships I'd done before, and I had enjoyed those a lot. I'd done Monte Carlo simulations. I'd done some geophysics work with subsurface imagery and things like that. And I was just like, boy, that was great. But the core of what I'm doing right now in terms of physics is not fun. And I was kind of like, it's software. What I'm enjoying is actually the software aspect of these things. So I literally dropped a course so that I didn't graduate, stayed a fifth year, picked up a computer science degree, applied for a job, and the rest is history. So that's how I got into computer science. I've always loved computer science, but I always viewed it more like something I enjoy and it's a game as opposed to something I can make money off of. And there's a certain point in your career where you're kind of like have this aha moment of, I can do this and they're going to pay me for it. So that's how I got to into software engineering and into Microsoft. In terms of matriculating into my current role, one of the things that CSEO as a whole has been working on is being intentional about how we're actually becoming a product engineering organization. And one of the aspects of that is getting product engineering leaders into the organization that have done it before. And so the head of our organization, Kurt Delbaney, and other people like my current boss, John Genderzak, and the leader of the CPE organization, as well as EUSC, had all been recruiting me for about a year. And I was always kind of had this nagging worry in my mind is this thing real? Like, is CSEO really trying to be a product engineering organization, or is that where you go to, have your career die? And I took the leap and trusting, the leaders of those organizations, took the leap and came into the CSEO organization. And the thing that I found is that it's as high a quality engineering organization as any other organization I've ever been in. We're doing software engineering of the same kind that we were doing in the office organization. And so the goals of CSEO to become a product engineering organization, the foundations are there. The way I would describe CSEO as a whole is not that it's not a product engineering organization, it's earlier in its lifespan than something like the office organization that's been around for 30 or 40 years. So CSEO is transforming into a product engineering organization. The fundamentals of software engineering are there, and the fundamentals of service engineering are there. And the places that we're catching up are places that, a more mature organization has just had more time to do. Things like, how do we actually ensure security fundamentals are in place? Like, what are the processes that need to be in place for that? That's the kind of thing that we're iterating on and learning from. How do we run service reviews? How do we actually mature some of the fundamentals of things that might be second nature to a product engineering organization? And we're just moving down the line from an immature product engineering organization into a mature one. And where I'd say we are right now, we're probably 80% of the way there in terms of the maturity. And just being able to be a part of that and help that along is just really exciting. It's an exciting time to be in CSEO.
So as a partner, is that sort of your responsibility on a daily basis? Because I think a lot of us can relate to your software engineering background, but kind of curious about what your day-to-day responsibilities are.
Yeah, I don't write code now, which is one of the things I struggle with in terms of, I'm really passionate about writing code. I write a ton of code on my own, but like putting it into the day-to-day, I don't write code day-to-day. A lot of what I do is actually clear the way for my team to actually execute. And so figuring out what the priorities are, how we engage with the business groups that we actually do the work on behalf of, to figure out requirements, partnerships with other parts of the organization, other parts of the company where we might actually be able to have a deep partnership with something like Dynamics. Dynamics is used commonly for sales. Just to give a concrete example, my organization actually owns a tool that we call Daily Recommender, which puts recommendations for sellers to engage with customers on a regular basis. The Dynamics team is highly interested in that because they think that's a capability that other companies could leverage as well. And so we're working together to go take what we've done and actually get it into the product. And so that's the type of thing I do on a regular basis, is engaging with the partner teams, engaging with my own team to set priorities and set the direction. I run I run service reviews for my team, making sure that we're keeping a high bar for ourselves in terms of availability of our services. We run some very huge projects. Like one of the biggest projects we have in CSEO, which is on my team, was what we call the Adobe project. We're working with the Adobe company to transform our marketing technology onto the Adobe stack with Microsoft's customizations that we need in order to, like as an example, our sellers actually deal with Azure, and we actually compensate our sellers based on not just how much revenue they generate, but how much usage they generate. And so there's special needs that come into play because we're paying our sellers differently than a lot of people pay their sellers. And so working with the business group to figure out what those rules are and what the requirements are, and actually turning that into actual projects and allocation of resources across the team. I spend a lot of my time doing that.
Excellent. So you definitely answered my question, and I think it's very valuable that that you spent the time to kind of break down your experiences and give us an overview of CSEO. So we really appreciate it. On behalf of all of the candidates, I want to thank you for taking the time out to kind of meet with us and share your experiences.
Yeah, I'd say it goes both ways. I'd like to thank everybody who's here and interested in roles at Microsoft. You have a choice too, and I really thank you for listening and for considering Microsoft.
Excellent. So we'll go ahead and move on. So thank you, Stanley. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the different team members that have actually volunteered their time to give you guys a better idea of sort of some of the different teams within CSEO, different hiring needs, and experiences of folks that work on the team. So our first speaker or panelist that I'm going to introduce is Managa Raghu. So Managa, if you're ready, Managa is a senior software engineering manager. And I'll let her talk a little bit about her background, what she does at Microsoft, sort of her path to Microsoft, and then we'll have a quick conversation. So Managa, if you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming here and showing interest in Microsoft. I'm Menika Raghu. I am a senior software engineering manager at Microsoft. As Stanley mentioned about a little bit before that, I belong to the organization Core Platform Engineering, and my group is particularly called Core Platform Engineering. And the key role we play is developing the tools and software that are necessary to bring all the compliance and the service health for all the apps across the CSEO. With that said, I come from a very varied background outside this country, completely away on the other side of the globe from India. I too have a varied path that I took before I got to software engineering and to Microsoft itself. So I did my bachelor's in engineering, and I was an electronics and communication engineer. So nowhere near computer science except for the communication part. Then I did my master's in project management at a later point after I started my career as a software engineer. I was working as software engineer in India before I moved to and relocated to United States. I came with because of an opportunity that my husband had, and I just dropped my job there and came here, look for a new position, and then started as a vendor and a consultant for Microsoft. I worked I think for 2 years as consultant in various groups, including IT, Windows group, and also part of Microsoft research team. It gave me a pretty good idea of what Microsoft looks like, what are the various things that goes on in Microsoft. To be very precise, the MSIT, as everybody says, it was not traditional IT field. When I entered as a software engineer who will write code all day, right? And then I went to Windows, where I learned that software engineering itself has a different varied angle and a different rhythm and cycle to it, and it's like a well-oiled engine that produces code. And then I went to Microsoft Research, which is its very interesting part. I actually am curious to get into that if I get a chance again in the future. So there it is, like individual researchers research on all the new latest technologies. The code part is needed. There is very minimal to make it a product and make it like POC, concept proof of concept, that will be able to we can able to sell to other people, like just for showcasing and selling your idea purpose, not for something like a product yet. So which is and there I was able to play around with a little bit of the electronics part of myself, where I had to play with some of the IoT things and sensors, drivers and stuff, which was interesting. After that, I got recruited for a position in CSEO. I was still a consultant and then became a full-time employee for the same team. And then I'm really happy working for that team. Though I started as a software engineer, I quickly changed my role and became a software engineering lead and then a manager now. So this was a very fast path for me growth wise. So I really enjoy working for Microsoft and CSEO.
So can you tell us a little bit about your team? So if I'm a software engineer, very interested in Microsoft, would love to understand, for example, the type of challenges that your team solves, or problems that you solve, or services that you provide.
Yep. So to give a background, I started the career as in this particular team when we started that digital transformation journey. We built out, which took 4 days. We automated that and bring it down to 20 minutes. So in place of requesting one VM and waiting for 4 days, they used to build out 100 VMs in the cloud, which was an amazing thing. That was a huge improvement, and also code and software wise, that's a very robust software which was pretty like automating and creating VMs in 20 minutes, like. And then today my work is preliminary on the service health, which is a key area and focus for our current goal and leadership, and where we are trying to move towards more product oriented and robust code that is equal to the product groups, right? In that goal, to achieve that, we want to measure ourselves, our services, how they are running, what is their health, how can we measure our success of our the improvements that we are making to our products today. That is the key responsibility, and my team is responsible for automating the service health tools, the different various dashboards, the service health product, which is an offering today by Microsoft called Service 360, and my team is responsible for surfacing all the KPIs in that product and automating further to simplify user experience using that product. Yeah.
So a really common question, and thank you for kind of giving us some background about the details of what your team is responsible for. So my next question is around what technologies. So I know we've got a lot of software engineers that are interested in opportunities, maybe on your team or different teams, right? So what technologies have you had to touch in your career, and then what technologies is your team using now?
Yeah, in terms of technology, we use very largely C Sharp code, and then we use some .NET technologies. And then for the front end, we use Angular, React. Now it is React. We used to use Angular, and now in with React, there is also this Data Studio. Fluent code, which is becoming a Microsoft standard, which is what we adhere to most of the part. And then in the data pipeline wise, we use a lot of Kusto queries, which is an internal offering at this point. And then we use the Azure Data Factory, which is again a cloud solution. And for most of the part, all our products and tools and applications are built in cloud. So no more hosting IaaS. It is all PaaS or SaaS offerings. Yep.
And then another question I'm curious about is, and I'll probably ask everyone on this question. So where is most of your team located? And I'm assuming after COVID, people might be working from home right now, but maybe they're based in certain locations around the country.
Today, for my like overall team, not just my directs and reports. My most of my directs are located in Redmond in Millennium Campus, and the rest of my team, we have a whole team located in Millennium, and then a team in India, IDC, and then a team in Africa, which is a new ADC center that we kind of opened up this year. Or last year, sorry, 2020.
And then how large is your team that you have to manage?
Right now, my team is a 7-member team. Yeah.
Okay. So I think you answered all of my questions. Actually, I have one more question. This is like, I almost forgot my favorite question to ask each individual, right? And that is, for you, why do you feel Microsoft is a great place to work for you personally?
That is a great question. As I said, I started as a vendor and I had my freedom. I felt like I don't want to go and become a full-time employee responsible for more things than I need to be. That's how I started doing the consulting job, because I had freedom to move around. I had everything. And then once I started Microsoft, I fell in love with this role and this company, because first thing, I am valued. My opinion matters. That is a huge thing for me personally. I really want to have that voice. To be heard, right? And then the second one is I have a great work-life balance. I can be a mom, I can be the cook I want to be, and then I am still that software engineer and the manager I have passion about, right? And no compromises. I didn't have to make any compromise, which I value very much with Microsoft. Yeah.
Excellent. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time out on behalf of all of our candidates. We appreciate you sharing your experiences, talking to us about your team and sort of your matriculation to your role now at Microsoft. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yep. So we'll have a panel discussion with everybody that that takes the time out to speak. But I'm going to, like I said, introduce everyone one by one. So our next panelist that I'd like to introduce is Wilfredo Cruz. So let me spotlight Wilfredo. So Wilfredo is actually a senior software engineering manager as well, out of Puerto Rico. So Wilfredo, if you're ready, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes. As you guys can see, I've been here for 10 years now. It's been quite a journey. Never thought to be 10 years into Microsoft, and in a blink of an eye, 10 years have passed. As Stanley, I come from the university. I originally got hired as a university hire. They came to Puerto Rico. They used to go to Puerto Rico in our big hiring event. And after 2 internships, I got here, and it's been, I thought I would move. It's funny hearing Stanley and others how much they have moved inside of the company. I came directly to DSRE, so the security team that Stanley mentioned inside of CSEO. And instantly when I joined, a lot of people told me stay 1 or 2 years there and then switch to the product team, because this is IT and you need to learn from the outside. But it was during that time of the transformation, and I thought about doing it and I thought about learning, but 10 years later, I have switched roles inside of the same team to becoming a manager of 11 people now during the same team. So for my last 10 years, I've been on the same team and the same organization in security.
And your background is in software engineering?
My background is in computer engineering. In Puerto Rico, we do, or we used to, I think that they changed it now. They used to do a 6-year bachelor's of both software and hardware. So I had to learn a lot of hardware that I did not enjoy that much. And now I'm full stack into software, or most of the time we still stay in the software.
So can you talk a little bit about, so I know you're from Puerto Rico. Where do you work out of now? Like, where are you located now? And then what was the transition like, or relocating from Puerto Rico to wherever your first position was?
That's funny. I switch. I love my back. Looking at my own background, I'm laughing at. I see the beach there. That's from my home island. In my first internship, it was a big shock. I moved here for 6 months for an internship, and it was during the what we call the rainy season, so most of the year. It was very different from seeing the sun every day to seeing a little bit more of rain, cold weather compared to what I'm used to in the island. But after I moved here full time, I have come to really love the diversity in terms of the weather that we have here. In my island, you get sun most of the year. Our temperature in the Christmas season is still during the 80s. While here you can go snowboarding or you can go hiking and things like that. So that transition was physically was a little bit different because of the weather. In terms of the people, I come from Latin America, right? And we tend to be very community driven. And that was a little bit of a scary movement for me because I was not sure what I was going to see there. After my internship, I met a lot of people here and I created great bonds with people, but they did not share the same background that I had. When I became full time and moved here 2 years later, I met more Puerto Ricans, one of our ERGs of Latinos. I joined quickly and I started meeting more people. So now I have a lot of friends. I thought it was kind of unique a guy from a small island coming here, and then I have met 40 or 50 people here. I'm like, you know what? We have a good community here. We have a good family here. So it has helped me find new people and learn. But as always, it's a big change moving from kind of like the Caribbean to the Northwest to the other side of the United States at that point. And it had a lot of challenges for the same reason.
So can you talk a little bit about the technologies that you've had your hands on from the time when you started to now? I know you're an engineering manager. Do you still have to roll up your sleeves? But let's talk about a little bit of your background technically. Like what kind of technologies have you worked on since you've been at Microsoft?
It's funny you mentioned that because as many others have mentioned, technology changes really fast, right? And in a software company, you have to keep up with it. There's no way that you join us today and say, hey, I code creating, I don't know, JavaScript, and tomorrow something else will come, right? Megna mentioned that we switched from React to Angular to now we have our own framework and things like that. So it's always evolving. I don't want to talk about all the technologies that I've used. I think I have explored many things. One of the things that for me that I love is that I get bored really fast of projects. So even though I've been in, one of the things that I really like about security is how much we have to change. Our adversaries, the people that are trying to hack Microsoft, they learn really fast and they have a lot of money to learn and to adapt new techniques all the time. So for the same reason, us have to keep up. We have to train very often. We have to learn from them. What are they doing now? What are they trying to achieve now in order for us to evolve and also achieve? So in my experience, it has changed over the years, but I'll even say my direct reports have been in my team for 2 years now, maybe 3 years, coming from the university, from what they knew, coming from the university to what we are. It evolves. Custo was nothing a year and a half ago. Now most of our projects are big data driven, right? APIs have become a lot more RESTful and more reusable. So we're trying to do a lot of automations. One of the big things that for me and my team now is about automation. A lot of the things that we used to do manually, how can we either leverage technology through APIs to move data from one system to the other? How we can leverage request systems or queue system to be able to handle bigger scale our customers have also scaled up, and we're dealing with hundreds or hundreds of thousands of customers. How can you scale with the same amount of employees or the same amount of resources in order to do that through performance, machine learning, AI, and other technologies in order to get there?
So for your particular team, what type of skills or background do you look for in a talent that comes in? Is it programming languages, or is it what type of technical skills?
I tend to say that the languages are less important, at least in my where we work with. Adapting to them, learning from them, adapting where you can find the logic behind. I always say that a language is a way to express yourself. I speak 3 languages myself, human languages at that point. Computer languages are the same thing, right? You will have through your career, you will have to learn and adapt. So to me, it's more important the logic behind it, how you're thinking as a person, how you look at how you approach a problem. And sometimes, like I wrote on the chat, thinking outside of the box, because sometimes we inside of CSEO have to deal with a little bit of unique users. In security, if I put an example, many companies out there lock down your machine. We in Microsoft, since we create software, we let admins be everybody on their machine. Well, in security, that brings a couple of issues because of it, because we have less control over what we can do. And you have to start thinking, okay, it might not be something that is out there in Stack Flow or Bing or Google. It might be something that I have to think about for this specific situation. How can I leverage technology to solve that problem?
So that sort of leads me to my next question, and I'm sure a lot of candidates are interested in opportunities with Microsoft, but maybe they might not be in a product engineering role now. Maybe they're a software engineer and for a company that their main thing is not to produce software, right? So they come to a company like Microsoft that is sort of the sets the bar for writing code, historically, right?
Yeah.
So they're very curious about the interview process. So can you talk a little bit about, I'm curious about your interview process. I know you were an intern, so maybe it was a little bit different, right? But and then also the interview process for folks that join CSEO or your team in specific.
Yeah, definitely. When I joined, since I did an internship, my interview process was for the internship. If you manage to get into the internship and then kind of like do a good job there, they will offer you the job. And the interview process was 4 different interviewers with a lot of technical questions. A lot of it was the typical, how do you resolve this? How do you resolve that? I think that we're trying to modernize ourselves more. We're looking into attributes, and we're looking into how the person answers the question, what kind of skill set the person brings into the team, rather than just the typical solve me a tree problem or solve me a sorting algorithm, right? I've been pushing my organization a lot to deal with scenarios. I tend to do, throughout CSEO, we're trying to grow up there, and in the SRE, we're trying to see how a normal typical scenario. In my interview, I tend to do, I want to say, at least 20 minutes of just normal day-to-day question to get the candidate talking. We all know that the candidate will be nervous. It's not something that we need to hide. It's something that everybody goes through it, right? So it's about learning and adapting from there. And then I walk them through a scenario where we run through a project that we did a couple of years ago. And we go through some of the situations that happen, some of the difficulties, some of the challenging parts of that scenario, and then see how the candidates think about it. I tend to say, hey, I represent my whole team, so you will have a bunch of people. I'll be role-playing different personas here. Feel free to ask questions. I've had candidates that don't know the technology, and I'm like, that's okay. Talk to me about the technology that you know to see how you think, and then you'll be able to have the experience of learning through it, right? I think that we're learning that diversity and being different in terms of the technologies that you know and the background that you have sometimes bring a different idea or a different mindset. If you come from a scripting background versus an object-oriented, you might see a problem in a different way than an object-oriented person, which might be a really good thing for the team that you're working on. An SRE team or an automation team will appreciate that more than a product team for that matter. So there's a need for both at that point.
I love that about Microsoft. That's a theme. As we've done more and more of these events, that's a theme that has kind of stayed consistent as a common denominator at Microsoft. It seems Microsoft looks for talented and smart people that that know how to solve problems, that have creative ways to solve problems, which I think is a really valuable thing to diverse communities, right? So really appreciate you breaking that down. So my last question for you is like my favorite question. Why do you feel Microsoft is a great place to work for you personally?
I think it has evolved over the years. I think I would say that when I joined my first year, it was the paycheck. Coming from a very, very poor place in Puerto Rico, struggling through my childhood, when I saw the paycheck, I was like, yeah, that definitely told me where to sign. I'm not going to even think about it twice. I think over the years grew into a passion of, we do so many different things in security that I will always have an opportunity to learn something new. I would not get bored of the same technology. I always thought about myself, if I work on the same button my whole life, I definitely would not be able to be happy. So being in security is something that is always evolving, and there was always a new challenge for me. I think that towards the latest years, I've been very proud of what we have done during COVID times, and doing in a little bit sharing here during Maria, the hurricane that affected my island. I think that how we treat our employees, how we thought about not just themselves, but their families, with them in the center of the conversation and not what they do for the company. It was not about, I need to find during Maria, I don't need to find my employees so that they can do their job. It was, let's find our employees to make sure that them and their families are okay. And then we can talk about what they can do with their job. It was never a conversation of, we need them right now to do something. We need them right now to make sure that they're safe. And even though I've been living here for 10 years, when I approach my management and I say, hey, my family's still there and I haven't been able to talk to them for more than a week. Is there anything that we can do in the same way that we're doing for all employees? And they were like, yep, it's still your family. Let's see what we can do. And they helped me bring my family over here during the Maria time. And for me, that really kind of like touched me, because seeing the employee through more than just the business side, it was something that makes me grow and makes me be proud of it and how much they help my family. So I think over the years, I've fallen more and more in love because of some of the leadership decisions that we take as a big company that we are.
Man, that's a really great example that speaks to Microsoft's culture, and that's why I like asking that question. So that was great. So Wilfredo, thank you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and move to our next panelist, and then after that, we'll actually have sort of a brief panel discussion, and then we'll give folks that are on the candidates that are on the call. We'll give you guys a chance to ask questions. So our next speaker is Michael Lucas. Michael is a principal PM manager on the CSEO data team. So Michael, if you're ready.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Michael. I guess I'll start with how I got in Microsoft. I grew up in Germany, came to America. My dad's American, my mom's German, so Army brat. And when I came back to America after college, I had a very different kind of career path. First of all, I never got a degree. There's some things that happened personally in my life with my family, specifically my dad. He got really sick, that I left college and had to help with family things. So I never came back and got a degree, and I went right into the workforce doing different jobs. And so I actually started off as a developer, worked at places like Nordstrom and other companies, and this is going to date me. In the early 90s, when web was first coming out, I actually got involved in web development. And so all the jobs leading up to me coming to Microsoft were in the web development realm as a developer. And there's a guy I worked with at a startup who worked at Microsoft, and he'd been trying to get me over to work for him for years. And I'd always said no because of the culture that Microsoft had back in that time, right? They were known as the sweatshop. And then finally, I decided to trust him, and I came over and I changed to be a program manager. And so the reason I came over was I thought, I'm going to spend 3-4 years at Microsoft, gain experience in program management and stuff that isn't web-based, so I can go back to a small to medium-sized company and be a director. Needless to say, I'm here 15 years and haven't left. And so throughout my career, I've done different roles, mostly all PM. But ranging from engineering PM, because again, I had a technical background and I started as a developer. And so I kind of gravitated towards building platforms and application systems. But I've also done other roles in PM that are non-technical, things like driving evangelism and adoption, running services. So I've run the full gamut. And right now, the role I'm in is I actually work on the data team. And Stanley spoke about it a little bit in his segment, where our team is really accountable for helping enable the company, and specifically CSEO, to use data in an effective way. And so we have different portions on our team that deal with how we do governance, how we create a centralized platform capability that all data engineers can leverage to build their data products and do the things they need to do with data, as well as a data science team and data analyst team that also are trying to create tools and capabilities that the organization can use. And so really our core job is enablement with the focus on data for the company as we do this transformation.
So I love to understand folks' background and their path, to their current role, because I believe that a lot of candidates can identify with the more they hear about you, the more they can identify with, and then we can have some interesting conversations, right? So one thing that interested me about your background was that you were in development, right? And were you self-taught? How did you get into the web development?
Self-taught. I mean, like I said, I didn't get a degree. So I was working at the help desk at Nordstrom. And back then, in those days, Nordstrom was a company that had massive mainframes and like a cajillion apps. So our book to help people at the help desk was literally a binder that was wider than I can show you on this screen. It was massive. And at the time, there was a group that looked at technology trends. And that's when the web was just starting to be looked at as a possibility for companies. Like there was no how we have web now, right? AOL, I don't even think was around at that point. And so I was shoulder tapped to take a look at this and try this out. And so I literally had to learn when HTML was first coming out, like 1.0. And I figured out a way to use this technology to try and simplify that big binder and make our systems more efficient. And then that led into me doing database design and engineering to where I was building database systems, which got me into a startup. And again, it's because people saw what I could do and they gave me a chance. And I'm very lucky. I've always had people that when I proved myself, people bought into me and were my ally and then helped me get roles. Because I don't think I would have made it to this startup, and I sure as hell wouldn't have made it into Microsoft if people didn't know who I was. Because if you looked at my resume, you're automatically going to kick me out because I don't have a college degree. And so that's kind of how I evolved. It was a lot of me just learning technology, figuring it out. And I was lucky because the web was growing and there weren't experts in it anyway. And so I just kind of made that my thing. And through the years, I just kept learning and learning different things. And I'd say that's the most important thing I've learned in my career and that I value the most with people when I look at candidates. Your ability to learn means everything. I'd rather have somebody who doesn't know something and has demonstrated a learning ability than somebody who's an expert in something and hasn't demonstrated the ability to learn.
That's actually the root of my question, right? So my next question was going to be, how has that served you well, having that background and that technical and the fact that you had the initiative to learn it on your own? How has that served you now in the transition from the technical, types of roles to being in program management at Microsoft?
Oh, it's helped me tons. Me having the dev background and having learned that and then learning PM lets me engage with people and my peers at levels that others who haven't done that can't. And the other thing I've learned, and I just recently had this happen in my current org, we've had new management changes and things like that. And we had a leader who came in on the data team, because I kind of got reorged into the data team, who assumed I didn't have a data background and kind of pigeonholed me thinking I wasn't going to be the right person for the role I was in. And I was able to demonstrate, no, I actually have the ability. And credit to the manager, she changed her perspective by seeing how I was and said, okay, I totally misrepresented what I thought you were or weren't capable of, and gave me a chance. If I didn't have that drive and that desire to learn and really prove myself, it kind of gets to what Stanley said. I think a lot of people on this call have felt the same thing. And people see that desire, they buy into you, and that makes a huge difference.
So can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day, with your role, principal PM manager? What is the day-to-day actually like for you and what does it look like, for those that are on your team?
Gotcha. Now, I have a very unique role. The role I'm in on the data team right now, I'm helping with a lot of the strategy and the planning. And so my role is, we have a big engineering contingent under my manager, who builds a lot of this platform capability to help enable groups like Stanley's org to do the things they need to do. And my job is to make sure, A, I understand what they're trying to do and how they're doing it. I understand what our customers are looking to do, and that we align those. And so for me, it's how do I properly help the team plan, get a whole bunch of junk out of their way so they can do their job effectively, and let me deal with a lot of the, I don't want to say the political stuff, but there's a lot of stuff when you deal with higher levels in the organization that have to be worked through. And so that's really my role now, which is completely different than when I was an engineering program manager, when I was running a platform and an app.
Excellent. So my favorite question, so I'm going to ask you as well. Why do you feel Microsoft is a great place to work for you personally?
If you would have asked me this a year ago, you would have got a completely different answer. It would have been similar to what Wilfredo talked about. Given everything that happened in 2020, I really struggled. And to have a whole bunch of peers that work with me who aren't Black reach out to me, make sure I'm okay, empathize and want to listen and help. And for the company itself to put so much effort into the whole D&I conversation, that meant a lot to me. I've seen this company change drastically under Satya, where the people, to me, seem to be the most important thing. And when stuff like what happened in 2020 happened, for the company to step up the way they did, when they're not forced to, because not a lot of companies do that, that's what matters to me.
So I can echo that sentiment, because in 2020, when things, not only with COVID, but what happened with the George Floyd situation, I thought I was going to actually have a break as a business owner, right? I thought, okay, I've been waiting for this moment, for 15, 20 years. I'm going to have a break into action for a minute. And I can speak to your point. Microsoft stepped up, and we've been, we did more event work with Microsoft in 2020 than any other year in the past. And it wasn't just doing events to talk about Microsoft. It was events that led to people working at Microsoft. So for me, it was very exciting to work with a company like Microsoft. So I appreciate that comment. And I think it reflects in the fact that you all are taking the time out to share your experiences, to share your journeys, as different and diverse as they are, with our audience. So I thank you for that. So now I'll go ahead and transition into the next section of our evening and our event. So now for all of the folks from Microsoft that have joined us, from Stanley to Managa to Wilfredo and to Michael, I'd like to have sort of a quick discussion about Microsoft culture, right? So a lot of us, we have a technical background. I like to tell a story about how I almost went to work for Microsoft as a software engineer before I started my company. And the only reason why I didn't go to work for Microsoft when I got that offer, which is sort of like the holy grail for somebody that's a software engineer, you get the offer from Microsoft. The only reason why I didn't is because I knew I wanted to do my company, right? But years later, now Microsoft is one of our #1 partners for my companies, and I'm very proud of that. So but one of the things I like to talk about when we have sort of this discussion between HBCU Connect and Microsoft is the company culture. So if you guys are okay with it, I'd like to ask you all some background questions about your experiences working for Microsoft. So my first question is, for those of you, you have very diverse backgrounds, minorities, working at Microsoft. And this is an open question for anyone that may have an experience that they want to share. And maybe I'll start off with Stanley. Being a minority working at Microsoft, do you feel that you can be yourself? Can you bring who you are to work at Microsoft? Because I know I worked in corporate America before. I was an intern, I did internships, and I always wonder, am I sort of like a paid actor? You know, I have to come here, I have to do my job, but maybe I can't bring who Will is to work, right? I have to be sensitive of that. So I want to know, what is it like at Microsoft? Do you feel like you can bring yourself to work?
I've never struggled with that. Like bringing my authentic self to work is like, I don't think I'd work anywhere where I couldn't do that. And so I've always felt comfortable being myself at work, and you know, just talking about the same thing I would talk about with anyone else. And so it's something that I haven't struggled with personally at Microsoft. Bringing my authentic self is I don't know who else to be. And so that's never been something I've struggled with.
Does anyone have any experiences where maybe there was a cultural thing where they thought one thing at first, but then their experience at Microsoft proved otherwise, where you were comfortable, you know, bringing yourself to work?
I have an experience that I can share. So as I mentioned, I'm from India, and the outfit that we wear there is completely different. I'm not used to any of these t-shirts or jean or anything. There, it is an outfit which is called sari, and I haven't seen many people wear it to work here today. So I assumed I can't do it, and I kind of transformed to the new way of dressing when I moved to US. But after being part of the women's group and being part of the team and working for Microsoft, I realized that's not a limitation, and I can be myself. And I am wearing sari to work during summers. Of course, I don't want to wear it in winter because I'll be cold. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that insight. So my next question is around, I guess it's sort of a two-part question, right? So for Michael and Managa, you've worked at companies, so you weren't directly recruited out of college to work for Microsoft. So you worked at different companies. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between working at some of the companies you've worked at in the past and then working at Microsoft? So I'll maybe start this one with Michael.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to caveat is Microsoft, when I first joined, was a completely different beast than what it is now. There's way more positives now than there was when I first joined, I'll be honest. The biggest difference when I went in, Microsoft's always had this brand of being the best company, right? And I remember leaving from the company I was to go in, I thought, oh, they're gonna have everything figured out, everything's gonna be perfect. And when I came, I first started in incentive compensation. And my first month, we had to do a deployment to make sure people got their bonus checks, and the system was in disarray because they tried to do a major upgrade. And I was literally developing code, even though I came in as a PM, because we were so behind. And I'm like, wow, this is not what I thought. It's disorganized. So that was an eye-opener. But I will say, the thing I love about this company, especially under Satya's leadership, is I feel like I don't have to leave this company to have whatever experience I want to have. And that, like, there's so many opportunities, there's so many different people you can work for. You can't get that at many other companies.
Excellent. So similar question, right? So the difference between, you know, obviously candidates are not currently working at Microsoft now, so they may be curious as to comparing where they were before and then, you know, coming to work for Microsoft. But those of you now, you work at Microsoft, but maybe you worked on different teams. So can you speak to, you know, for those of you that have worked on different teams outside of CSEO, you know, some of the differences for, you know, maybe their cultural differences, maybe their, you know, technical differences about how people do their job, but the difference between working for CSEO and maybe working for the Windows team, or, you know, a different team within Microsoft.
I can certainly speak to that, having spent 24 years out of 25 outside of CSEO. And there are definitely differences. Like as an example, and this is actually something that I think CSEO is ahead of the game in terms of you know, modern engineering. I came from the Office organization, and Office operate, like the products in Office are 20, 30 years old, sometimes even older than that. And in Office, we have this monolithic build system where when a build takes place, it to build the entire Office product takes, big iron machines over a day to build them. And so our release cadence was gated on that. And we were working on breaking it up and making it more by product line and things like that. And we got it down to, Word can build on its own, SharePoint can build on its own. Even then, SharePoint took 6 hours to build. And it was a very centralized source control and build system. And in CSEO, we use, we're not quite in Get yet, but we're moving towards Get, and we're moving towards smaller components. And these components come together to form a service as opposed to a monolithic build system. And that's actually a big difference in terms of the way we operate. There are advantages to having a monolithic build system because you can integrate tools into it very easily. But it also hampers productivity because I have to wait for my monolithic build to finish before, we actually, the tool you built the product with was called OHome. And the reason we called it OHome was because you start it and you go home. And so we're evolving that as a company, and everyone's moving into these new systems, and we're part of that too. We're actually moving into it.
Excellent. So appreciate that insight. So this next question is I'm gonna target to Wilfredo because I really could identify with some of the points that you made about what you look for in an interview. So if you had to give advice to the candidates that are excited about interviewing with Microsoft, everyone, they're learning that if they don't already know, they're learning that Microsoft is a great place to work, especially for minorities. So what advice can you offer candidates in the interview process to kind of maximize their chances of showing what they can do and maybe landing a career with Microsoft?
I think that the biggest advice that I can give is, and it will sound very cliche, but there's a reason for it. It's be yourself and be honest. A lot of the time, like I mentioned, about being nervous. You're going to be nervous. That's a given. It's not something like anybody who says that they're not nervous in an interview, they might not care enough. They might not be passionate enough for that interview, right? But being yourself would show me who you are on the day-to-day. The worst experience that you can have as a manager is to hire somebody who was somebody in that interview, and it's a completely different person the next day, right? Hiring somebody, it's almost, as a manager, I've learned it's almost as a relationship, right? Because you're gonna spend a lot of time with that manager and with that team, and sometimes being not the right fit, it's a good thing for you also, because it means that you might not enjoy the job, you might not enjoy what we do as a team, right? Being yourself is about demonstrating your expertise and also the things that you have opportunities to grow on. Maybe I am looking for somebody in my team that can grow a set of skills that I don't have in my team, and you might not have there, but you can learn them because you're interested on, right? Being able to demonstrate that your passion lies in this specific technology or the way that we do something might show me that, hey, it might be somebody who I want to put there to grow through that path, to grow through that skill set so that they can help others in my team. I personally try to create a team that is balanced, so not everybody has the same kind of skill set. To me, it's more important that they're willing to share and help each other out and create a team community. I have 11 people now, and definitely without the help of a lot of them working together, we cannot accomplish what we normally accomplish. One of my tools right now has to scan 36 million IP over 56 different ports in less than a day. It's a big number. It's a big scalable problem. We brought up a bunch of engineers from different product teams in order to try to come up with a solution that will help us be there. Having that soft skills of knowing how to work with somebody that doesn't work in your team, doesn't work across the aisle, but works 5 or 6 different buildings across, that were the ones who design Internet Explorer, that design something of the certificates in Windows, right? People who are very experts in their technology and are willing to collaborate, if you're willing to talk to them, it's a skill that is sometimes very, very important. And in CSEO, a lot of the technology that Stanley mentioned, that Michael mentions, we work across the aisle a lot of the time, and they are my customers a lot of the time, and I am their customers. And at the end of the day, Microsoft employees are our customers most of the time. So Stanley and I will sit in a meeting and be like, okay, I can do this for you, you can do this for me, and it will create a much better experience for everybody else. Because at the end of the day, people from the outside are not going to look at Teams and are going to say, hey, it's a Teams problem. No, they're going to say it's a Microsoft problem. In CSEO, we deal with the same thing just inside of the company, where people are not going to say, hey, that's a DSRE problem that you're not letting me do this from a security perspective, when it's an S360 problem or it's a custom problem or it's something that Stanley's working on. They're going to be like, it's CSEO, they won't do it. So having those soft skills are also something that will be very important in that meeting. So being yourself and show me how you can deal with others, how you can interact with me as your manager and your peers will be the best advice that I can give you.
Excellent. Okay, so we're starting to get some questions that are coming in the chat. So given the time that we have left and the number of questions that I'm seeing, I'm going to ask you folks as team members on the Microsoft side, if you can answer any questions in the chat that I don't get to, feel free to do that. But the first question I see is from Noma. How does the CSEO team support the cloud team, specifically Office 365 and Azure, given the ever-changing needs of companies and the nature of the technology? So
I'll hop in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would choose you as a default.
I was trying to get some room to, just in case someone else wanted to answer the question, but like we work with pretty deeply with the Office 365 team, Azure team, Dynamics team. It depends on the touch point each team has. We actually, the phrase we use in CSEO is we're customer zero. Microsoft is customer zero for its own software. And so we are using the cutting edge versions of Office 365, of Dynamics, of Azure. And we basically give that feedback back to, like, we build on top of that cutting edge set of features so that we can experience any problems that might occur before it gets out into the world. And so we feed that back into the product teams to enable them to make the changes that they need. So that's a direct way that we work with the product teams. We also work with the product teams from the standpoint of integrating some of the things that we do back into the product. We have needs that are unique to Microsoft. We also have needs that we build our own solutions for that are common to other customers. So, and I'm going to use an example from your world, Michael. Enterprise Data Lake. The data team created this, created essentially a data repository called Enterprise Data Lake. It's the data platform upon which CSEO is building our data products. They're also working with the Azure team to make that as an offering as part of the as part of Azure, with Azure Databricks and their data lake technology. And we're working with the product team to actually go turn what we built there into a product on its own in terms of in Azure. And so we work pretty directly with the product teams to improve the products for our customers beyond Microsoft, but also to make it better for Microsoft employees too.
So thank you, Stanley, appreciate that. So the next question I see is from Brooks Stevens, and I see Managa kind of touched on it. And that is about the work-life balance at Microsoft, right? Because a lot of people, Microsoft has millions of customers. Microsoft is a huge company. Maybe, especially like Michael, when you said it was a different company in the past. How is it working at Microsoft now from a work-life balance perspective?
I can take it, I guess.
Yep.
Way better. About 12 years ago, I had a conversation with my manager because I started working at 8 a.m., got home at 9 p.m., had an hour to eat something, and got on a call with India from 10 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next morning. And so and this has been after working 80-hour weeks for a while, incentive comp.
Wow.
And I had a conversation with a manager that said, basically, I'm never doing this again, or I'll find another job. Since then, the way the company has really looked at the employee experience, we don't have those problems. At least I don't. I'd love to hear from Wilfredo, Managa, and Stanley, but everyone I know, managers really ensure that the employee can tell them, I have too much work, because then it's a priority conversation. What's the most important? What can we drop that isn't going to provide value? One of the things we talk about in Connects, which is our review process, is it's not about how much you work, it's about the impact you have. And so the discussion is always about how do we create the most amount of impact without burning our people out? Because we've learned the hard way as a company, if you burn your workforce out, they're going to get less done. It's not going to be as high a quality, and the good people are going to leave in droves to companies that don't do that.
That actually was going to lead to one of the next questions I see, which is what inspired the major positive changes. And I'll let this. I want to leave some time for Jesse to speak to the recruitment process, but maybe each one of you can maybe touch on this in your perspective on this. But what inspired the major positive changes? And I'm hearing some themes as you guys have spoken today, as well as different teams within Microsoft. And one of the themes I'm seeing is that Microsoft is continuously looking to get better, not only internally, like for example, CSEO as a product and service provider internally for Microsoft, and the teams within Microsoft raising the bar on the quality of the software that you produce, its product level, getting better, right? Not only in the recruitment process, the fact that Microsoft is more and more inclusive. So there's all of these positive changes that I'm seeing, as a partner to Microsoft. So if we can round robin this, but if I'll defer to I'll start off with Stanley to speak to what has been driving these positive changes within Microsoft.
Like Satya Nadella, he made a huge change to the company, and some of the things that we talk about with like work-life balance, those were in place, or not in place, but those were in progress even as Satya started to take the helm of the company. The change that Satya actually brought to the company, which I thought was super positive, is Microsoft internally and externally used to be all about competition. And like I work in the Outlook team on the first version. There were 4 mail clients at the company at that time. And the goal was to actually let them compete, and whichever one took the market share, that's the one that won. So there's internal competition, a lack of trust between organizations in the company. Externally, we had a lot of competition where our goal wasn't to work with other companies, it was to crush other companies. And what Satya brought to the table was what he called the growth mindset, which is all about evolving the capabilities of the company and the capabilities of individuals in the company, and really focusing on people. And it shows up externally in the way that we actually interact with companies. Like a decade ago, there's no way that we would be doing a huge deal with a company like Adobe, or we have Oracle running in Azure. Like there's no way that would have happened prior to Satya. And instead of actually competing with every person, with every company out in the world, we're working with them. They're partners. We're building partners. We're not building competitors. And it's actually working out really well. Like we don't try and compete and put people out of business. Instead, we try and integrate and do as much integration work as we can. And I think it's been super successful.
That's like, okay.
Excellent. So does anyone else want to add on to that before I hand it off to Jesse?
Yeah.
You might want to do it
Go
anyway.
ahead,
Sure.
I think someone joined. Please mute your phone, whoever joined.
How long does it take to do one? Well,
Quickly, I was just going to say we also listen a lot to our internal employees. We have different feedback mechanisms that are completely anonymous, and our managers tend to be very open to have that conversation. I think that in my organization, we always have a virtual team that we call the people team. We designate non-managers to kind of like represent each one of the team and have meetings together to figure out ways where we can improve. And then we listen to them very actively. It's not something that is just, oh, you're going to belong to the people team and we're just going to say we listen. We listen very actively and we work on some of the feedback that they give us, because it's the only way that we can evolve also as a company and get better at what we do.
I would
Excellent.
like to add that. Yeah. To that, I want to really add the factor that we, as a company, has accepted the human element in everything. In being an employee or being a customer, there is a human factor to it, and we started to embrace that human factor. And a huge part of that is it's okay to fail. It's okay to change, go back, retrofit. If you see a duplication, go ahead and reconfigure reconcile and make sure that you don't create that for yourself and then move ahead with the next productive work that you have to do, right? So that's what I wanted to add to that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So if there's no other comments from our panelists, I want to thank you all for taking the time out to speak with us and our candidates that we have on the call. I'm sure people are very excited. But one thing I always like to do before we sort of close out on the meeting is I like to briefly hear from someone on the HR team. And so I'm going to default that to Jesse to speak to the process for candidates that would like to interview with the CSEO team. So Jesse, if you'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Appreciate it, Will. Yeah, so if you guys take a look into the chat window, I've posted the interest form link a few times in there. So to be considered for one of these roles, simply just fill out this interest form link. And then step one would be a HR phone screen with either myself or someone from my team. Step two would be a technical phone screen. And this is just going to be a 45-minute to an hour phone call with the software engineer from the team where you'll be evaluated on coding skills, your understanding of data structures, algorithms, ability to problem solve. And then those that pass the technical phone screen would be placed into a virtual final round interview, which will be determined at a later date. So it's really just a 3-step process as soon as you fill out the interest form. And I'll post it again in the comments just so that it's high up on everyone's chat.
Excellent. Thanks, Jesse. And I will also send out that link for everyone via email. So make sure to keep an eye on your email. Make sure to fill out that interview interest form. You know, the CSEO team is looking for experienced software engineers. So if you have a little bit less experience, but you still want to get your foot in the door at Microsoft, we have a large series of events that are coming down the pipe. So so keep an eye on your email because we will invite you to some of those future events if maybe you're not currently a fit for CSEO. But one of the good things about Microsoft that I've witnessed personally is that Microsoft will reach back out to you once you're in the pipeline for different opportunities, right? So this is a really serious effort on Microsoft's side. So we really want to say thank you to Microsoft, you know, from HBCU Connect to Microsoft. Thank you for spending the time to talk about your experiences. I know everyone is busy. It seems like now that, you know, everybody's like working from home right now, it seems like we're working more. So I really appreciate your time. Wanted to say thank you. And we look forward to, you know, hearing some good news about some new team members from our organization. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to all the candidates for taking the time out to learn more about Microsoft. And like I said, stay glued to your email from a note from me with next steps.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Thanks.